products. In order to lead this panel, let me introduce Vanderlande. They're going to be facilitating this panel. Gustavo Torres, Regional Service Account Manager at Vanderlande, will be leading this panel for the next 42 or 45 minutes. So Gustavo, whenever you're ready, you can introduce the rest of the colleagues. Take it away. Well, hello, good afternoon. It's our pleasure to collaborate today with you. It's my honor to be part of this session regarding IT solutions for airport security. We have Arián Ramírez Fuentes, Regional Manager of the Southeast SSIE Group. They're going to talk to us about airport strategies in times of pandemic. Then we have the Border Solution Manager for the Americas at SITA, Mr. Gerardo. Now, regarding the issue at hand, the pandemic and the new normal, of course, we need to continue working on security at the airport while leading with the new normal. So, Arián, airport strategies in times of the pandemic and the new normal. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your vision. Well, thank you very much, Gustavo. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Okay.
La veo, yo la veo.
Perfecto. Pues muchas gracias, Gustavo.
Buenas tardes. Thank you very much, Gonzalo. Good afternoon to those of you in Europe. Good evening. And good morning to those of you in Latin America. I would like to thank GAP, Segurilatam, and the Civil Aviation Federation, as well as all the attendants to this very well-known 10th Symposium on GAP security. And greetings from Cancun, Mexico. My name is Arián Ramírez. I am the manager of the SSIA Group for the last 7 years. We're going to talk about some of the post-COVID challenges that security companies and airports will have to face in our country. Now, let me explain in just one slide. Who is this SSIA Group? We're a leading company in private security in airports and with airlines in Mexico. We also offer services outside of airports. We currently provide a service in more than 18 cities and 6 airports, and we have collectively more than 27 years of experience in private security in our country. We are certified for the ISO 9001 processes and for inspection checkpoints at airports. And we have some 3,000 employees, including operational and admin staff. And we provide services in Mexico at present only, but we want to continue growing across South America and Central America in the future. Okay, so let's get to it. When there are important world events, economic crisis, the September 11 in 2001, or big pandemics, all of that has impact on our routines, our lives, and our work, and therefore it has impact on our finance as well. There is impact on airport security as a result of this as well. As we've all experienced with COVID-19, this has not been an exception. Since last year, we've had to adapt to this usual concept, something that we know already, very familiar with. It's the new normal. I was talking to my daughter a few days back, and she asked a very interesting question that I am sure most travelers have as well. Her question was the following: Daddy, after all of this with COVID and everything, what are airport and security companies at airports doing for me to travel again, and how can I go back to traveling safely? Well, the answer to that question is precisely what airlines aviation authorities, airports, and security companies have been working on. Now, let me talk about what we faced from the beginning with COVID and how we are trying to provide an answer, that a response that gives peace of mind to all travelers going forward. My time is limited to 20 minutes, I believe. So I'll try to adjust to that. And I have 2 points to make. First, let me talk about what security companies are doing. And secondly, let me talk about what airports are doing, what are they facing, and how are we tackling problems together. So let's talk about the challenges of the new normal for private security companies. Initially, we've had to carry out new risk management internally. So we need to know the risks, classify them, and protect ourselves from their impact or as best we can. At the same time, we've seen new security and health safety measures that we've had to take into account, and then we've had to promote them within the airport. That's been really interesting. In fact, when COVID broke out, we had to talk to all of our employees and explain to them they were going to be on the front line of a pandemic, an unknown virus that we didn't know if there was a cure for it. Nobody knew how it was, how contagion happened, and they had to continue working as normal. So that was quite a challenge, making people understand that we were going to give them the necessary tools to feel safe at work, and that's actually what we did. And then we'll now realize that information needs to be shared with clients, staff, airlines, vendors quite quickly. We've had to exchange information a lot more constantly now than in the past, and we need to take timely, strong decisions to adapt to this new normal and reduce risks.
We also had to deal with stressed passengers because they all have an imminent risk feeling, and with the uncertainty on whether they could come back safe and sound to their homes back. I think this is at world level. People are not traveling with that peace of mind we usually had, because you're always worried about the other person being infected, and this is an emotional overload that you didn't have when you were traveling in the past. We also faced the fact that we had to work with limited resources and creating new processes that mean new qualification, which entails, of course, new costs, and trying to cover the required functions that come into the airport life. What are we doing as a security company to try to solve or mitigate those risks or those challenges? Well, first we had to raise awareness in our staff to follow all the health measures. And even if it's hard to raise awareness among the top management, the 3,000 people that we have working for us has not been an easy task, but we managed to raise awareness among all of them. We also qualified our personnel to use thermal equipment. This, of course, requires theoretical information as well as practical information to really understand what they have to do. You cannot tell them, please take a look at the temperature of every passenger going by. You need to really understand the seriousness of the decision of leaving a person on the ground and not being able to fly. We continue to work with our staff to raise awareness about treating the customer, the treatment to the customer, because there's been an increase in violent passengers, and we have to deal with them. Another thing that we've done is, well, all the countries have generated their own health surveys or questionnaires, and there is no standard for that. There are passengers who are used to working with some kind of questionnaire, and if we give them another questionnaire from Mexico, which needs to be completed in a different language or in a different way, generates unrest in people. So we take a look at all the different formats for the proper interpretation of the questionnaires. And we as a company have developed internal personnel administration software. This enables us, amongst many other functions, to administer the documents of our personnel and to be able to trace all the incidences or incidents that our workers may generate, and even for example, sick leaves. And this software helps us to understand in what working teams was a person working, so that we can identify if there is any risk for people to be infected if we had any positive case. So this tool has been very useful, and it was internally developed. Now we're going to take a look at the challenges that the airports have faced in this new normal. The first and the most obvious one is, and the most complex for all the airports, has been the reduction in the number of passengers. Of course, with that, there's a reduction of the income, which is the most important thing at an airport, apart from the security of the passengers, of course. In the airports, since the beginning, they had to work with lack of clarity and a great lack of information around COVID. This doesn't only happen in Mexican airports, this happens worldwide. And they have to implement new procedures that were non-existent existing in the past, and most of them had to operate on the trial and error method, which is a bit difficult, you will understand, and they need to make they need to implement all the new procedures and activities in an immediate way, and this is not an easy task, of course. The social distancing is a great example. No airport in the world is ready or prepared for social distancing, and new adjustments had to be made in all the public spaces and all the spaces within the terminals to keep the social distancing. Since the beginning of the pandemic, temperature measurement had to be done for all the passengers, and this made the whole process to access the airport and to go to the screening controls be slower. And of course, this generates unrest amongst the passengers. We had to work avoiding contact with the passengers' documents, questionnaires, belongings, and this is something we were not used to in the past, and this is not the way we used to work. So, in summary, we have to carry out many more functions with much less resources. That was the main problem, really. So we do not need to be an expert in finances to have to understand that this is not the best formula to work more with less resources. So these are the main challenges that we had to face in the airports. Now let us move on and take a look what is being done in the airports to try to mitigate these main problems that we found. Well, first, there are smart temperature detection systems installed and automatized. As we know, the temperatures first were taken manually with a thermometer, but we had to adapt to what we had, to the resources we had, but now we could improve that part with these smart detection systems. There are centralized health questionnaires. That is an important step forward. This helps us to have traceability not only at a country level, at national level, but at global level. And in that way, we can take action or take measures to try to mitigate the impact of the virus. In Mexico, currently, we are using a new platform that you can find in www.vuelaseguro.com, flysafe.com. And this generates a QR code where you can access all the screening control points. In the airports, They are also installing systems that are touchless or contactless systems, so we avoid touching the belongings or the carry-on baggage of our passengers. Everything that has to do with the boarding pass or the baggage, this is now as automated as possible to avoid direct contact. We've also seen in certain airports that we have started to install automatic disinfection machines for passengers as well as for employees. We have analyzed and we have also installed, in some cases, the modern systems for the passenger flow analysis. This helps us to monitor the passenger since this person is coming into the airport, and we monitor his or her behavior in the public areas, the check-in counter, and when they go to the screening inspection points. And in airports where there are 4 filters to come into the waiting room, you can manage with this technology and you can tell the passengers through different screens that are installed in certain points at the airport that they need to go to one gate or another, or to the screening points. So this has started to be implemented in some airports around the world. We are constantly working with our employees and our staff to remind the passengers that they have to use the face mask, that they have to keep social distancing and the hand sanitizer, etc. This is something we worked a lot with the airports. And in order to make things easier for the passengers, due to the requirements of some countries, there are mobile laboratories created within the airports, inside the airports, because with some countries we had problems with tests that were not correct, so they can analyze the COVID samples, and with them we can safely get on board the aircraft. And another challenge, which is probably the most difficult one that the airports had to face, was reducing the resources, the economic resources they have, but without impacting the operation and without impacting the security of the passengers. This is the most difficult part, because if you do not have money, of course, it is difficult to keep operation and keep security, but the only thing, but this can't be affected. What do I think that we will be listening about throughout this year, 2021? Well, in summary, we had to adjust to something that we didn't even know 1 year ago, which is mitigating the risk of all the users on an airport. And the topics that I think will be hot topics and will be subject to hot discussion this year will be the part of passports and electronic certificates of vaccination. Even if they are not standardized now, there is a project, a pilot project for regulation, and it says that a vaccination certificate shouldn't be a pre-requirement for the freedom of movement of a passenger. With that, we could say that people that are not vaccinated for medical reasons or because they are not part of the target group for which the vaccine is recommended, for example, children, or people that still didn't have the chance to get the vaccine or do not want to be vaccinated, they should continue to have their freedom to or the right to free movement. But all those people that have not been vaccinated would need to understand that they are subject to some limitations imposed by the different countries, depending on what their government would say, as is our case, flying to the US with the COVID tests. This is a restriction that they are imposing in the US, and this is a limitation for passengers from Mexico deciding to travel there. What other topics will become hot topics? Well, the touchless technological tools, e-passports, And we will probably listen about machines identifying if people have COVID or not without having any kind of contact. And we will also hear about the implementation of new procedures for security and hygiene, which will stay there forever probably. There's another topic that I hope we will review very soon, which is the vaccination of all our security and airport staff, because we are in the forefront, we are in the first line, and we are a risk group. So this is probably a topic that we will soon see in our country, to start to vaccinate all our people. We will continue to have forums and roundtable discussions with authorities and airports to discuss best practices in our service. And we could even have the topic of the use of dogs, canine dogs, to identify illnesses, COVID-19 or other illnesses. Hopefully, we won't have any other pandemic soon. And very importantly, we will continue to guarantee certainty to travelers so that they are going to have a safe trip. So the answer I gave to my daughter when she asked me was, believe me, all those who have to do with airports at world level are really working very hard so that from today, you and all the rest of the passengers can have a peace of mind that they can safely travel to any destination around the world. So that was the answer I gave to my daughter. So this is everything I had to say, Gustavo. Thank you very much. I leave my personal contact details, and thank you all. Thank you very much, Arián. The challenges were very well explained, mainly when we speak about technology, we think about the gadget, but you spoke about the basis of technology, which is the processes and how they had to be adjusted and reinvent the processes and everything that has to do with the physical contact with the passenger without jeopardizing the security of anyone involved. We have a question from the audience. How about the security guard? With all these new challenges, they had to develop new types of qualifications and training, receive specific training. You were mentioning that in your presentation. So what would be, or what do you consider is the important added value as a company, as a security company, during this first stage of the pandemic? And where do you think was the biggest impact on the airport? Well, in reality, I would say that the value is the security or the peace of mind for the airport and for all the passengers, that we are not going to be a means to spread the disease. This peace of mind, I think, is the most valuable thing, and it was really hard to get to that. And we worked really hard to make sure you will never see my guards without a face mask, without keeping social distance. They will manipulate the belongings of the passengers, but then they will use different gloves, change gloves, or use hand sanitizer to make sure that everyone has a peace of mind that their traveling is safe. Thank you very much. Thank you, Arián Ramírez, Grupo SIA, for your great presentation. In the same panel, we have Camilo Cardenas from SITA. He is the business manager for border solutions. Camilo, we speak about the pandemic and the new normal, and you will tell us about the health control solutions to have safer trips. So the floor is yours, or the screen is yours. Thank you, Gustavo, and thank you for inviting me to Segurilatam and for GAP for allowing me to be in this panel. and to tell you about our vision and what we believe are going to be the systems in the future to control health in the industry. I'm going to share my screen now and my presentation. And sorry, I would like to apologize because you can hear some sound coming from the streets. So I'm sure that almost all of you, all of the participants in this symposium know SITA and know the robust solutions we provide in the air transport industry. Not only airports, but SITA also has a business line that is focused on governments. This is a parallel line. We currently are 100% owned by airlines, and we're only focused on air transport. We are present in more than 2,800 customers, airlines, airports, governments, etc. And they all work with us. And as you will understand, working with airports, with all the activities that we have on a daily basis, control and migration control is of course an important part in the airport life. And these processes are a crucial part for the passengers and those who use the airports and travel. And SITA has been developing solutions that integrate the operations of all these stakeholders, airlines, airports, operators, governments, and they all coexist in the same ecosystem. This is why we have a working line that is focused on border control and security, which has solutions regarding authorizations to travel, or that we as passengers apply before taking a trip, mainly international, a visa, for example, or an e-visa, etc. So we can give the information to the different governments when they need it before the aircraft lands, and the government needs to make a proactive decision after a risk analysis about a passenger that is on a flight. It can process on a very safe way the passenger when they arrive to the airport.
Para poder permitir el paso de frontera y el ingreso al
To
país.
be able to allow border crossing and access the country. At all of these point in times and in these situations, there are SITA solutions implemented across different countries right now. And these are control security initiatives to support the reactivation of travel. So let me talk about two health and safety related solutions, trying to retake activities. We've been promoting them with airlines, airports around the world. This is already working, it's in place. And I hope it will be interesting for our audience today, and you will see what we can do to resume travel again. So let me start with a very basic solution. This is supporting governments and airlines to standardize or try to standardize requirements upon entry to a country. This solution is based on the travel authorization system, is the electronic health authorization. It's on the cloud, can be quickly implemented, and it helps governments, airlines, and airports. Because right now we're implementing it with several airports in the world. It helps all of these stakeholders to authorize in advance so that the person who will be traveling through an airport, taking an airplane, can do so safely. This provides people with traveling with them and people at the airport with the security that they meet the requirements of the outbound and inbound country and the airports in transit. So this electronic health authorization proactively and in advance helps passengers log onto an app where they're asked several questions and then they are vetted and approved. They issue a QR code that other stakeholders and the governments get to know that that person can safely travel through an airport. This goes alongside a certificate. In this case, it's a QR code. And there's a verification done afterwards through a security checkpoint at an airport or when onboarding the train, or will eventually enable them to cross the border into a country. So imagine that tomorrow we're traveling to a given country and we're leaving Mexico today. Well, we're going to be receiving a notice from the operator saying these are the travel requirements. We already received that today, right? But there's just no standard way to do it yet. So passengers will have to go onto the mobile site or the website, fill in a questionnaire. And this is not standard. There are different options across countries right now. While the questionnaire is going to be filled in, passengers will have to add their negative COVID result, as most countries around the world request, including Latin American countries, which as of today are requesting a negative COVID test, or that they take the test once they arrive at the country. But other countries are going further. We've gotten to the point where vaccination is moving ahead in several countries. And vaccination certificates will be validated. Any of these players and passengers will get the information loaded and a validation will be made. Validation can be made automatically to measure the risk that passenger entails, of course, depending on the responses or the forms given to the questionnaire, the rules defined by the airport or the airline or the government to issue the certificate. So once a certificate is issued, there's a check made through a QR code, something that the airport can easily and safely verify. Through the process at the airport, then onboarding the airplane, getting to destination and including local controls. Now, this is something that we're implementing in Europe right now. The airports are very interested in making a safe corridor to measure efficiently that all the passengers going through the terminal meet certain requirements and can safely travel through that airport. And then, of course, the travelers that go along with those passengers can travel with peace of mind. But that is not it. We've thought about this straightforward, while robust solution, and we want to go beyond. This is all evolving. We've been at this for a year, and there's still lots of unanswered questions in this pandemic. Nevertheless, we're talking about vaccines, e-passports, different systems. We've heard about different players, IATA and private companies, non-government organizations working on passport systems. So at some point, this is going to be standard. It's not standard yet, but it will be. And that is going to be a challenge for the industry, because the question will be, how can we verify that any system, any passport somebody owns, issued and certified by the government of that nationality, can be verified, and we can allow them to enter, so that it's a straightforward and even fun experience. So we've worked on an ecosystem called GeoProtect, which is the health protection ecosystem. So what is this ecosystem about? It's about going a step beyond and integrating these health passports that are being developed and implemented and pilots around the world, included into our central systems, to communicate and so there's communication across the central systems of the airport, governments and their interest in the airport, and then airline systems, so that we can provide an interactive response, and we can make sure that a passenger has a valid system and they have a negative COVID test certified by a lab, and they can safely transfer in that airport. So that's what we are aiming at. We want to verify that all of these health systems can coexist, and that verifications are easy and user-friendly. And this is what we want eventually, when people come through an airport, and all the measures taken can be taken before we travel, the moment somebody's buying their airline ticket, and making sure we comply with requirements, COVID, or let's say, for example, when countries, one way or another, make authorization requirements mandatory and travel requirements mandatory, and doing a mobile check-in when we log onto a website of an airline, or we go to the airport, making sure that we do all of these in advance, so that when we are at the airport, our time or transit at the airport is much faster and easier, and more passenger friendly. And while of course keeping security, which is essential, and it's at the very core of our conversation today. So I believe that's it. I hope that, well, we can help you out, and this application will be useful for you. I believe that we're going back to normal. That's the only true thing. Well, things change. We see how on a weekly basis we're, well, going through ups and downs, improving, getting worse constantly. But the truth is that we need to be ready to reopen, and it must be done safely. So thank you very much. Thank you, Camilo.
Por aquí tenemos una pregunta bastante interesante referente al
tema. We have quite an interesting question here regarding the health passports that you mentioned in your presentation. Could you share about the implementation of the health passport in an airport? And if so, what is the feedback or information that you have regarding a typical success case or the results offered to date? Sure. So health passports, once again, there are no global standards, therefore there are lots of players. We found and identified more than 68 different initiatives. Yeah, 68. When we thought we were going to get to one standard, that's what we found. That's 68. Now, our idea is to integrate all these health systems, and therefore we did a pilot a month ago in the Middle East. There is a health system approved by the government and recognized by players across the country, and it will enable validation of the information, and also negative COVID test validation. So we've done a pilot to integrate into this system. We got passengers coming from Europe who were in transit from Europe, and we did this health passport identification system so that as that person would arrive at the airport, automatically, interactively, the information would be sent to the government of this Middle East country, and that the government would authorize the passenger to onboard and go through the plane and go through the airport. So this system has been approved already. I think I've heard it in the news. There are increasingly more countries adopting different systems, and this is happening in our region too. We've heard from Central American and Caribbean countries. Well, any of these 62 initiatives I just mentioned really is one of them. And what we want is to integrate them into one system to make it flow well.
Perfecto. Muchísimas gracias.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias.
So, Arián and Camilo, thank you very much for your time and for your talks. They've been, well, very interesting. You've explained everything very well, and we are all adapting to the new normal, right?
Gustavo, y muchas gracias a Arián y a Camilo.
Well, thank you, Gustavo and Arián and Camilo. We've gotten some questions from the audience. So, Gustavo, I have a question for you, even if you haven't presented. The audience is asking, how has Vanderlande adapted your products and services to the new normal? And how have you become aligned with our experience now and our reality now?
Sí, claro que sí.
Questions? I mean, any comments about this? Yes. Camilo mentioned a few moments ago how the travel experience starts before you set foot on an airport, and it continues after you've left your airport of destination. Vanderlande has been working on the passengers' stay at the airport, trying to evolve and adapt to the COVID times. One example we can offer is our automated return tracks for the trace at checkpoints. So what we have designed is intending to minimize contact between passengers and security staff to minimize the risk of contagion. Not only that, we are also working on disinfecting the trays where we place our documents and carry-on baggage to minimize the risk of contagion. So it's not just the passengers' experience and safety, it's going a step ahead, dealing with COVID today, but in a year or two, it's whatever comes. So yes, we work taking that into account, collaboration with all players in an airport. And of course, we do our part regarding technology and at checkpoints for passengers. Thank you very much, Gustavo. It's a pleasure to listen to what you're doing at Vanderlande, and thank you for your support.